Hey Dynamo Nation, what's going on? My name is James. Thank you for joining me on this episode today. If you're new to the channel, new to Dynamo Nation, welcome. I appreciate you being here. If you're not subscribed, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Definitely helps out the channel, helps me to pump out more Dynasty content like this. We hit the 500 number, guys. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. As soon as YouTube uploads my community tab, it's not an instant thing. It takes a few days. As soon as it's there, there's definitely going to be a lot more content coming on that avenue, so I can engage a lot more with you guys. So we got to that 5. The next push is going to be to 1,000. So if you're still watching, enjoy the content, smash that subscribe button. Let's get there. Today's video, we are looking at tight end trade strategy for our Dynasty leagues. I've covered data between 2012 through 2021, so 10 seasons of data. And we are looking at the average age of tight ends when they finish, to me, as every week starters. Okay, so the average age and then the average draft stock invested in the NFL into these players. So out of 10 seasons, we had 120 possible samples for this study here. We only came away with 69. So 69 players met my criteria to be considered every week starters. And so, yeah, let's get right to it. You guys can see where the data came from. You know, we can see, again, from 2012 to 2021, again, 69 out of 120 possible participants. For me, an every week starter, a player, a tight end, needed to score 170 PPR fantasy points or more in order to be considered an every week starter. You know, typically that shook out to be 5 or 6 players per season. And this was normally, like I said, right around the top 5 scorers at the tight end position on any given year. Some years there were more, some years there were less. Okay. But the thing about tight end is it is such an important position. The scarcity of the position. We talk about running back scarcity. Nothing's as scarce as tight end. 100%. If you can lock down one of those 3, 4, maybe 5 elite tight ends at any given point in time in the NFL, you have such an advantage in your fantasy leagues, especially in a dynasty. You look at Travis Kelce for the last 5 or 6 seasons, and the amount of work that he has put in for our teams, it's unmatched. He has been the model of consistency. Mark Andrews beat him out this season for the number 1 scoring spot, but Kelce was still second. And before this season, he had finished first 4 or 5 straight seasons. How many running backs are going to finish first 5 or 6 seasons in a row? How many quarterbacks or receivers? It doesn't happen. And maybe we'll never see this again from tight end. We probably won't. You know, Travis Kelce to me is the GOAT in terms of fantasy football scoring. Undisputed to me, he is the GOAT. Talk about positional scarcity and the fact that you're finishing first 5 or 6 seasons in a row, first or second. That's crazy. So let's throw our first table up. We can see, take a look at it together. This is going to cover the average age of the tight ends from 2012 to 2016. Okay, and like I said, these players needed to score 170 or more points in PPR. We can see from the sample size, there was only 41 players in this time frame. The average age was 28. Okay, of these 41. The median age was 27. Our most often age, though, was 25, which was interesting to me. Our range of players was 14. Okay. Our minimum age was 23. And then our maximum age was 37. And this shows me tight ends during this time frame produce later into their careers, right? And we can see 10 out of 41 tight ends during this time frame were aged 25 or below. So 24%. But 14 of the 41 were 30 or above. So 34%. Again, this shows us that tight ends during that time frame, 2012 to 2016, were producing further into their careers. And if you're talking about an average age of the top, 5, 6 players during that season at that position being 28 years old, that's older for these skill guys. We're not going to see that for the running back, and we're not going to see that for a receiver. Those ages are going to be much less than that. So tight ends at this point were producing later into their careers. And that's what we've all heard. Tight ends take time. They take time this season. You have to give that position more than anything. You have to sit on those players, right? And when we look at the mode for these players, over these 41 players, the average age for the mode is 25 years old, right? When a rookie comes into the league, what are they, 21, maybe 22, most often? So what does that tell us? Tight ends take 3 or 4 seasons before they hit their peak. But when they get to that 25 range, you're going to be pretty solid from 25 through maybe 31. That's what this data was telling us back then, 2012 to 2016. Let's see if it stays true. I'm going to throw up 2017 through 2021. Let's take a look at it together. This chart we can see from 2017 to 2021, the average age, 27. It went down a little bit, but not significant. But the median age jumped up to 28. So those two spots just flipped. Our mode here, there was a tie between 25 and 28. Okay, found that a little bit interesting. Obviously, the range being 12 because of our minimum age being 21, our max age being 33. And this sample size, surprisingly, there was only 28 players. So the tight end position over the last 5 years has gotten even more scarce. Okay, but we are noticing tight end production during this time frame began to shift towards younger players. Okay, 10 of the 28 tight ends during this period were 25 and below. That's up to almost 36% from where we were at before. And only 6 of the 28 were 30 and above. So that's down significantly. Okay, that means for us, tight ends are starting to produce earlier into their careers. And I think this is due to tight ends lining up more frequently out at wide and in the slot. I think that's why we're seeing this uptick in production. Okay, but we can see, based on these numbers, tight end is already a scarce position. 2012 through 2016. I want you to think about this. Only 41 tight ends in that entire time frame scored 170 or more points. Right? Fast forward 2017 through 2021. We're looking at 28. It dropped significantly. So this is a position that's becoming even more scarce, which means it's even more important to address it. If you can grab this position and lock this up, you are going to have a huge advantage. And when we look at 2017 to 2021, we just talked about Kelce. Kelce is eating up 5 of those spots. All 5 of those years, Kelce's in the top. Right? So if you take Kelce out of it, pretend he doesn't exist, only 23 other players finished in the top, or only 23 other players scored at least 170 points at tight end in the last 5 years that weren't named Travis Kelce. Like, think about that. This is a very scarce position. And it's oftentimes we just neglect. We don't even think about it. I'm just going to stream that position. That's a mistake. That's a mistake that you've been making for far too long. Tight end should be the first thing that you're addressing in these rebuilds. Lock this position down. All right? Let's go to the next slide. Here we can see the average draft stock from 2012 through 2016. And this is going to help us even more. This is going to prove this point even more. Average draft stock in that 5 years. The average was a second round pick for those finishes. Median was a second. Most often was a first round pick. And this is out of 41 tight ends. Right? And we can see tight end production during that time frame was directly correlated to NFL draft capital. 9 of the 41 tight ends in this period were drafted in the 5th round and beyond. And these includes undrafted tight ends. Only 22%. 29 of the 41 within the first 3 rounds. So 70%. 70% of the tight ends from 2012 through 2016 that scored at least 170 points were drafted within the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Obviously, NFL teams are prioritizing that position, right? They were. But it's a position that we're thinking about last in terms of our skill spots in fantasy and dynasty. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't to me. So let's see if that held up over the last 5 seasons. We can see here, 2017 through 2021. The mean, the average dropped to 3rd round from 2nd to 3rd. The median, also 3rd. And our most often round, the 3rd. This is a sample size of only 28. But again, tight end production during this time frame is directly correlated to NFL draft capital. Only 7 of 28 tight ends during this period were drafted from the 5th round and on, 25%. But 19 of the 28 were within the first 3 rounds, 68%. So when we look at this, like the draft capital, yeah, it may have switched a little bit in terms of the median rounds, dropping from 2nd to 3rd, and mode going from 1st to 3rd. But really, when I'm looking at the data, it was one round off between 3rd and 1st round in terms of these finishes. So it was really close, just like it was in the first 5 years. Draft capital matters for these tight ends. It 100% matters for our tight ends. The NFL believes it. We need to start prioritizing it. If you see a tight end taken in the first 3 rounds, they're expected to be a starter. But they're also expected to season for a couple of years. We cannot expect immediate production out of these players, out of this particular position. You know, it's going to take a few seasons. We can see 25 is that magic number for tight ends in Dynasty and Fantasy. The age 25 is going to be that break point, which is much later than our running backs and our receivers, right? We see those players produce 22, 23 years old. In tight end, we might have to sit 2, 3, 4 seasons before we get anything out of them. But if they have the draft capital and they have the skill, we're going to get production. There's a good chance of it. A lot of teams get lazy and they get, they kind of get down on players. They give up too soon. And this is like a David Njoku is like a prime example, a player who I've been saying, go grab him this offseason. He's probably a free agent in your league. He's going to be a free agent in the NFL. He's young. He's already had one top 12 finish, but he's got a first round draft capital. He has the athletic ability. He's just stuck in a bad spot right now. Go pick up a guy like Njoku, who's sitting on waivers. And let's see if he becomes the next tight end that ascends up this list. Because just like us in Dynasty, us in Fantasy Football, a lot of these players, their teams have given up on. There was quite a few tight ends on this list that they didn't hit till they left their initial teams, to where they finally ascended into a nice startable tight end situation for us. So don't get impatient. Let these players develop. That's the moral of the story with our tight ends. Let them develop. Okay? I was also curious to see if scoring has changed. Has the scoring changed between 2012 to 2016 and then 2017 to 2021? I found not so much. So let's throw that slide up. We can take a look at it together. We can see the scoring has not changed whatsoever. The top 5 scoring tight ends in each season from 2012 to 2016. We're looking at an average of almost 221 PPR fantasy points in a 16-game season. And over the last 5 years, that's at 218. So again, this hasn't changed. The scoring has not shifted. But what I will say is this 220, basically the average, the top 5 average, that normally equates out to like a top 18 wide receiver, like number 18, number 19. So if you can start essentially another wide receiver 2 at the tight end spot, okay, versus the rest of your league maybe being lucky to get 10 points a week out of their tight end, then you have to think about that type of advantage. You're going to get a 6, 7, 8 point boost every single week in that matchup. This is stuff to think about. And, for me, looking at these tight ends, again, going over to the trade strategy, age 25 is going to be that breakout age. Okay? If they have shown some production, if they've been in the top 7, 8, 9 before they hit 25, those are players I want to target. Because there's a chance that they're the ones that are going to ascend into a top 5, top 4 position. Okay? Some good offseason names for me, personally. I've already mentioned Njoku, somebody who's going to cost you nothing. Okay? Sitting on waivers. Just go grab him. I'm not saying he's going to blow up. I'm just saying he's free. It's going to cost you nothing. Grab him, sit him. Let's see what happens. Okay? But then you have players like a Dalton Schultz. 2 seasons in a row of finishing in the top 12. And this season, he looked really good. Top 5 finish. Dalton Schultz is the guy you should probably go get. Especially in Dallas. I don't think Cooper's sticking around next season. I don't see that. They have CeeDee Lamb. We know Gallup's a free agent. Cedric Wilson's starting to come on. I think you're going to see Dalton Schultz. I don't think he's going anywhere. I really don't. He fits that new mold, athletic tight end. Kyle Pitts, obviously. If you can go get Kyle Pitts, you look at the two brackets here. If you remember from the first 5 years, the minimum age was 23. The next 5 years, the minimum age was 21. We know Kyle Pitts was that 21-year-old. That 23-year-old was Robert Gronkowski. I want you to think about that. And I'm not, obviously, different body types, different players. But Kyle Pitts, as a rookie, he started the season at 20 years old. Okay? He's 21 right now. Turned 21 in October. As a rookie, in 16 games, cracked 1,000 yards at tight end. Almost 70 receptions. His biggest issue was touchdowns. He only had one. Imagine when that gets rolling and he figures out the red zone. Just think about that. He's 21 years old. Tight ends aren't hitting their prime until they're age 25. Imagine what he's going to do. He's an absolute, like, if you can go get Kyle Pitts, you have to go get Kyle Pitts. There's no two ways around it. And then the other player who I think is getting ready to ascend into Travis Kelce territory for the next 5 or 6 years is Mark Andrews. This is not a coincidence. Baltimore over the years has deployed their tight ends in this manner. If you guys remember Pitta from several seasons ago, right? They had Pitta. Then they had Ben Watson for a season. Right? Like they have, and these are all top 12 finishes. Pitta had a few, Watson, and then they got to Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is getting ready to lock it down. I have shifted my tight end dynasty rankings. I love me some Kyle Pitts. Mark Andrews is my number one now. After doing this study, looking at these numbers, I think Mark Andrews is getting ready to go absolutely ham. 100%. He's the player to go get at tight end right now. So if you have a Kelce and you can turn Kelce into Andrews, you're going to have to give up more than that. Or if you could turn Kelce into Pitts, that's what you need to do. And I think Kelce's still going to be good for another maybe 2 seasons. Like, he's an athletic freak. I don't think he's going to drop from 1st to 10th. You know, you look at Tony Gonzalez the last 2 seasons. You know, Gonzalez made up 2012, 2013, I think he retired. He was still a top 4 scoring tight end. That's Travis Kelce. Kelce is going to be a stud and be a monster still for a few more years. So if you have him in Dynasty and you're competing and you're winning and you can't get a Mark Andrews or you can't get a Kyle Pitts, you're still sitting pretty. You know, you have one of the greatest tight ends of all time. But if you're rebuilding or it's time to rebuild, those are the 2 players to go try to go get for a Travis Kelce. Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts. So this is going to be the video. Tight end dynasty trade strategy. You know, again, age 25 is that breakout season. That's the number we're looking for. And you want to see players who've done it before they got there. Top 10, top 8 finishes before they got to that age 25 season. It's a very good indicator here. Once they do that, when they hit the age of 25, they are going to remain productive. That's what I see. That's what this data is telling me. And we are starting to notice that tight ends are starting to produce earlier in their careers. 25 is still going to be that cut point, but we're getting some production. Kyle Pitts being a great example. Dalton Schultz, another example. So, all right, Dynamo Nation, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Stay safe.